with Anne and Mark. Time for a look at the newspapers, I think. We're joined by Claire Muldoon and James Woodhousen. And we've got lots to look through.
Yeah.
Shall we start with you, James? In the Telegraph, Starmer faces Brexit rebellion from pro-Europe left-wingers. Oh my goodness, can you translate?
Well, Starmer is under attack for momentum, although they don't seem to have...
Ministers, I should say, yeah.
Yeah, they don't seem to have much momentum. Like the Labour Party, in fact, just yesterday or the day before, the Telegraph had a report that 90,000 members have left the Labour Party out of about 500,000, that they're £5 million in debt. When they were,
the party itself?
Yeah, when they were £1 million in debt. And I'm delighted to see that the Labour Party, I think, is on its last legs. And for people to claim that they're left-wing in wanting to get back into the EU, I challenge them to name maybe 10 EU commissioners. I've just looked it up, and if anybody follows my tweets, I don't know any of them. And the reason is you can't vote for them. So if you want to be left-wing, you've got to be democratic. If you want to be democratic, you've got to hold English, Scottish, Welsh and Northern Irish politicians to account, rather than just hope that the whims of unelected Eurocrats should decide policy. So I think they're on a losing wicket, these momentum people. I should point out that their ilk, like Norwich South MP Clive Lewis, attacked the Assistant General Secretary of the RMT, Eddie Dempsey, for being pro-Brexit and indeed for being a racist, I believe. This is the kind of factional disputes in the Labour Party where you attack people who are Democrats as gammon.
However, when we look at the Times, which has come out with one of the latest polls, in terms of Westminster voting intentions, Labour in the lead at 43%, to Conservatives on 28%. A survey of about 1,700 British adults between August the 16th and 17th. That's some lead.
Yes, but I think we should always remember Neil Kinnock and his ability to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. You know, I mean, they're so weak, the leadership of the Labour Party, just like the left of the Labour Party. Of course, everybody hates the Tories, especially, and they will more and more with the cost of living crisis.
But they'll flail around looking for somebody else to vote for.
I'm not sure what they'll do. I think, you know, Liz Truss doesn't have the balls of Margaret Thatcher, to coin a phrase, and Keir Starmer doesn't have the balls of an Aaron Bevan or anybody like that, and nor does
the left. You're looking a long way back there anyway,
yeah, but Bevan, I didn't agree with him. It's too right-wing for me, but at least he knew what he stood for, and Churchill respected him for that.
And came from a working-class background.
That's right. And, you know, the Labour Party has the same brand name, but it's not what it was in Bevan's day. It's completely different. It's a party of the universities, of the middle class, of the small and medium enterprises that are important to the country. It was never a working class party. It was formed by the trade union bureaucracy around 1900. And the trade union bureaucracy, with some notable and great exceptions like Mick Lynch, has generally swung behind the pro-Brussels line of the Labour Party. I don't know what they're quarrelling about, these momentum people, because Starmer would like to get back in the EU. He just knows that it's not a winning policy.
Do you think some of our viewers might have
a view?
Yeah.
GBNEWS at GBNEWS.uk.
If we've got enough paper left in the printer.
Yes, please, absolutely. Meanwhile, Claire, let's look at university students. Possibly dropping out simply because they haven't got the money to continue.
Yeah, well, this is from the National Union of Students, and they're saying because of the cost of living rising, how on earth, and rents actually, student rents have risen from an average of £4,500 to £7,000. Now, my youngest just got his A-level results, and he's stuck at clearing. He's one of the 50,000 that I warned last week that didn't actually work hard enough, because although the places are there, other people are getting them just because they did better in their exams.
So is the clearing process actually happening right now?
It is happening right now. So
he is literally at the end of a phone or a laptop or whatever, waiting for somebody to offer.
Well, yes, but we're also waiting on remarks, because what you have to do is, if you get the paper back and there's a couple of marks inches away from, we need the points, right? We need the points or the grades, because some universities only offer on grades, some only offer on points, right? So we're in this dilemma. If he had actually worked harder, instead of going down to the cricket plains, you know, it might be a different story.
That's unfair.
No, it's not unfair. He did not work hard enough, right?
Does it matter?
I think he does now. He sees all his mates getting their first choice.
No, it's
But
got on
that's
national
not-
television.
But that's... And, like, our viewers know my view on children, right, and know what they should be doing. But look, next week we've got the GCSE results. The Telegraph, record high GCSE appeals expected as grades set to fall. Students could drop out due to lack of cash. It's not looking good for them. It's
And
really
the
not.
other thing is, Claire, that once they finish, which my son has, he's
Then
then
they've
got a
debt.
student debt 6.6%
interest.
every year.
Mark.
Twice the mortgage rate. What are they doing?
Mark, that's Student Finance England. You go to Scotland, you don't have that.
Oh, I know.
Unless you're English or Welsh.
Going to
or Northern Irish going to Scotland. If you're European, still free. If you're Scottish, still free. You know, it's not fair, and I've said this a myriad of times, but look, they've been through...
Nicola Sturgeon is discriminating against English and...
I always say that. I'm not a Nicola Sturgeon fan at all, as our viewers will also know. But anyway, students could drop out due to lack of cash. The National Union of Students want to get the government to give them extra money for bursaries. Where is this money coming from? The government has no money left. Right, it's going to be tough for them, as if it wasn't tough enough where this A-level cohort didn't actually sit any formal examinations because their GCSE were teacher approved. They are now going, at least they've got classes to go to, unlike the last previous 2 years of university students where everything was online. If you were lucky,
But wouldn't you?
and you're still paying for
If
it.
you were going to be the next Conservative Prime Minister, wouldn't you get industry and bang their heads together and say, I want a complete rollout of new apprenticeships. I want loads of really good apprenticeships.
Absolutely.
Now,
Or even
it could be
sponsored
done
university places as well. So
it could be done straight away.
But that would require the Tories to be interested in manufacturing and production, and none of them have a background or an interest.
Or it goes back to Blair, the knowledge-based economy.
Yeah, well, they thought, Peter Mandelson thought, he wrote a book or a pamphlet called Living on Thin Air, which completely idolised IT, which, as we know from the morning's discussion on Apple, can go wrong from time to time.
And you've still got to make stuff.
Yeah, you've still got to make stuff. You've got to extract stuff. You've got to farm. And they're not interested in that. They're interested in their careers and in property, in the law, and in public relations. That's their background. And the same with Labour, largely.
And is that why Germany's so much better than us? They actually like and are quite good at making things.
Well, yeah,
engineering
but
and the
Schultz is,
manufacturing.
if you're reading the papers, Schultz is really catching a cold on corruption and funny business at the moment. I mean, that's a different issue, but Germany takes apprenticeships seriously, and
they still make things, like you said.
Yeah, but we've always been a nation that made things. What
Used to be.
going on? James, tell us about the RAF investigating positive discrimination.
Well, I had to laugh. You know, I'm no fan of military action by Britain abroad. I think it's always been and always will be disastrous. But if you are going to have a military apparatus, it needs to be able to fight. And I'm no fan of James Heapy, the Armed Forces Minister, but he's backed plans by senior Air Force chiefs to look at ways they could legally boost diversity targets, but he's against positive discrimination. Now, what does that exactly mean? And then there's a spokesman who says in the RAF, training to clarify the difference between positive action and positive discrimination is delivered to all recruiting staff. What the heck are they talking about? Isn't it important to have a fighting force rather than going on about this wordplay?
Did you also see the suggestion that there was an internal email that they wanted an RAF frontline pilot to go to the Top Gun cinema, was it Leicester Square, where they had the premiere, but basically indicating that they would preferably want a female and maybe from an ethnic minority to actually present the new face of the RAF. And then, of course, they said, actually, we haven't got any female ethnic minority frontline pilots. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, you know, can you tell me which US president, maybe you can, Claire, which US president first opened the door to positive discrimination in the United States?
It's probably Donald Trump.
Nope. Warm.
No, that was a bit ironic, I have to say.
That's warm.
George Bush?
No, Tricky Dicky.
Oh,
Mixed.
mixed.
Yeah. You know, people just, you know, positive discrimination sounds great, you know, but Putin reads the papers. Xi Jinping reads the papers. If I'm them reading, oh, well, we want diversity at Leicester Square, you know, I'm thinking they're not going to be very good in a
They
tank,
haven't got their
are they?
priorities
Not
right,
because
have they?
women are already involved in frontline
Yes,
projects
they are.
in the army here and
Yes, very
elsewhere.
much so.
More waste and wokery in the NHS.
Yeah,
Dave,
that's
hasn't
it.
it? Armed forces.
Yeah. Of course, front page Daily Mail. After what we were talking about A&E, warned not to go to A&E because we've got a crisis blowing. NHS blows £1 million. This is in the past 3 years on woke groups for staff. Now, I'm affronted by this on two levels. One, the amount of hours, almost 110,000 hours have been spent giving classes in wokery, the LGBT party and other woke events over the last 3 years, and in fact the figure is set to be a lot more, as only at least a half of the trusts have actually given the information under the Freedom of Information Act, right? 110,000 hours in the NHS from admin and clinicians' point of view. Do you know how many patients' appointments could be made?
Absolutely.
Do you know how many patients could be seen? Do you know how many waiting lists could be cut? It's appalling.
And
Absolutely appalling.
Point in the hustings last night asked what we do about the NHS, and she pointed out about the bureaucracy that she said needed to be actually.
Get rid of it.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. I'm a patient at the Royal Brompton Hospital, which has saved my life, and it is an amazing hospital, a fabulous trust. I walked in there for a scan in March of this year. Everyone was masked up. The clinicians weren't even around because there was the appointments with your consultant are still on Zoom. You go to the hospital for the actual tests. The CEO or the chief advisor of the trust, there was a picture, a plaque being unveiled because he was leaving. I've never seen so many managers and doctors standing around.
Yeah. Quite right.
And I was quite vocal in my, vitriol against it because I'm affronted. I said, oh, sorry, have I walked into a clinic that I didn't know was on? Am I disturbing you?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Why
here's
is
a
it
nice
that
picture.
whenever we talk about the NHS, though, and anecdotes like that, which infuriate, there is also an awfully good side. Why is it so different in different places? I mean, I've been with the NHS just recently, and I've never been so impressed by the staff.
It's true.
They've been absolutely marvellous and ready to give appointments and all the rest of it. So how come you get a totally different picture wherever you
Well, it's I hate to mention the word on GB News, but isn't something about this to do with class? I mean, when I talk to ambulance men, they're terrific and they work really, really hard. When I hear about the unveiling a plaque and the management, I think they're on another planet. And I've been to a trust meeting. I wasn't allowed to speak because that's not the way they run trust meetings. And broadly, they just lorded it over people. They're much more interested in bullying and diversity than patient care.
But they should be interested in bullying and diversity.
Yeah, but
it comes down to common sense. You shouldn't
Exactly.
have to spend
Stopping
all of
it on
those
the
hours.
institute.
What did you say? The common sense?
Yeah, I know.
Common sense is 2022 we're living in, Anne.
But
That's gone right out the window.
Who hasn't got the common sense? You walk into any NHS ward or whatever, the nurses have got common sense.
Exactly.
The doctors have got common sense. Who hasn't got
I should say
common sense?
I know a nurse, and she told me she was once ushered up into the top management floor and so on, and they're counting the beds by pushing little wooden beds.
Oh, really? Like
like in the Second World War.
Fighter command.
So before we rush to say, they're paid too much, nurses, they actually get much more and so on. What are these people doing?
Yeah.
Have they never heard of IT? But there they are doing stuff 70 years back,
Right.
Makes you tear your hair out,
Yeah.
doesn't it? I think we've got to leave it there because we've just run out of time. Thank you so much. We'll see you again. We'll see you again in about an hour. Yeah.